So I eventually said to myself, like, okay, if you really want to find your person, your partner, and that love that you said you've been looking for, you're going to have to change your perspective around dating, how you are approaching dating, and what role social media will play in that dating journey. Hey y'all. It's your girl Key Simone, and welcome back to my channel. So yes, I am in a hotel room. No, I am not homeless again. I am just traveling for work, but traveling for work does not mean that I miss a weekend of filming. So here we are. And today I want to chat with you guys about a topic that's really been on my mind lately. And I feel like now is the perfect time because the uproar around it has really died down. And that is women who center their content around finding a man, looking for love, and wanting a relationship, and if that makes them desperate or not. And if you're like me and chronically online on TikTok, you know that this conversation really comes from that whole Talitha Jane debacle. Basically, Talitha is a well-known TikTok content creator and influencer, and she's known for her relationship content and her horror dating stories and story times and things of that nature. And she recently kind of opened up to her audience and her followers that one of the main reasons why she moved to a new city, which was a really big story arc in her content for a while, was for a man in the hopes to pursue a relationship with this man. And baby, let me tell you, the girlies were upset, okay? There were think pieces, there were multiple part videos. It was a lot of judgment, a lot of critique for Talitha, and it turned into this phenomenon on TikTok for at least a week. There was not a time where I could scroll on my For You page and I didn't see a video about Talitha or their opinions about it and stuff like that. And one of the main themes that people were talking about was how desperate it makes her look, that she would do something like that, like follow a man to another city, and also how desperate it is of her to have all of her content centered around a man. And listen, me personally, I was very, very quiet, okay? I didn't make any videos about it because that is how I got my following on TikTok. I posted about looking for love as a Black lesbian living in DC. That's literally how I would title all my videos for about 2 years. If I had not been sharing my journey in love, I don't know if I would have the large following I have now today. And so I was no comment, no concern, right? I didn't have any commentary because I've been Talitha. I might not have such a large following as her, and I have never been in a TikTok scandal in that way, I guess you can call it, but I've definitely been someone who has used their social media as almost like a diary to share their emotions, experience, as trying to find love, especially coming from someone who was seen as the single friend for most of my adult life. And so I kind of want to talk through my perspective on the situation from my own experience, right? As a Black lesbian who was openly and in some ways desperately looking for love, and then sharing that journey on social media, and why I eventually came to the decision to pivot my content completely away from that, even though I am now in the most healthy relationship I've ever been in. But before I jump into that part, I think it's important that I give a brief history of my somewhat chaotic dating journey. And it really kind of starts in 2020. So 2020, I'm in a serious relationship. We are exclusive, we are living together, and we are going through a breakup, right? And I didn't think that I was going to marry this person. And that's really because they wanted marriage and kids much sooner than I was ready for it. And now I am child free by choice, so I don't think it ever would have worked. But I was happy with them during that time. And so when we ultimately decided to break up, it was very hard for me. And that breakup made me realize how depressed I was in the quarantine and in the pandemic. You know, my ex dealt with clinical depression, and so a lot of the months that we spent together in quarantine was me just supporting them in their emotional well-being and just trying to keep like our household together. I also was still working full-time. I was not furloughed during the pandemic like other people. I had 2 side hustles as well, so I was like very distracted during the onset of the pandemic and the quarantine. Whereas when we broke up, I was completely by myself in a really small apartment. I only saw like one friend and a few family members. And so once all of those distractions were removed, it made me realize, oh bitch, you're sad as fuck. And you're kind of depressed yourself. And at that point, I didn't have any like emotional tools. So the only way I knew how to deal with being in that state was like just becoming very chaotic and becoming very toxic and just like another romantic situation. And so I ended up dating 2 different people at the same time for basically the rest of that year, and it was very unhealthy, very toxic, and I started to have some very serious emotional issues and walls and like anxiety attacks and things just like really escalated for me emotionally, which eventually pushed me to get into therapy. And so I started therapy at the end of 2020. Best decision I've ever could have made. I am still with my therapist today. Now, I don't see her every other week like I did before. I only see her once a month now because we've been doing the work, but she still saved my life emotionally. And so I eventually removed myself from those 2 very toxic situationships. And I just want to say, if any of those people are watching this video, I was more toxic than you were. I take the blame. Don't worry, I am not throwing shade. Okay. But I really like had to step away from being in relationships or situationships, because even though I was a chronically single friend for almost all of my 20s, I have always been a serial dater. I have always had a man. Okay, I have always had somebody that I was talking to, kicking it with, dating, whatever. I just would never get into serious relationships, but I was never by myself, okay, until I was. And so I decided to become single and really just focus on doing that emotional work in therapy. So I did that for about 6 months. And what they don't tell you about therapy and becoming less toxic and approach relationships in a more healthy way and just being more aware of yourself is that it can be really lonely. Not only do you see those red flags in other people and in yourself, you heed to them and you say, okay, well, this is not going to work for me, so I'm not just going to talk to you because I think you're attractive or because I have fun with you, even though I know you're not right for me. I'm going to actually like not date you, and then you're lonely as fuck. Okay, I'm gonna be honest, like being healthy and kind of like not being toxic when that is your norm can be very lonely. I'm not saying that being healthy is lonely, but it can be very lonely. And so I just got to a point where I'm like, damn, like I'm in a much better place. I'm a much better version of myself. And I think if I were to date now, I would definitely be a better partner, but I don't got nobody to date. And so I was in a therapy session one night and I was telling my therapist, like, I'm so lonely and like I miss dating and I miss having a partner. And she's like, okay, but like, have you actually tried to date? Like, have you gone out there and dated? And I'm just like, oh, like that never occurred to me, because honestly, a lot of my dating was like meeting people off of Twitter. Like that's just what you did in the lesbian community, especially the Black lesbian community. Like we were all on Twitter, we would all flirt on Twitter, and we would date from Twitter. Like one of the people that I was dating during that like toxic stage in 2020 was someone that I had met on Twitter. At that same time, I had just started my TikTok account. TikTok had been around for a while. I hadn't really caught on to it because I was very much a Twitter girl. Okay, I was a Twitter baddie, and a little Instagram, right? And on Instagram is where I tried to be more of like a content creator / influencer. I had done fashion blogging for a while, and was still kind of doing that on my Instagram. Wasn't really catching, like I just hit over 2,000 Instagram followers like this year, 2024. And I've had Instagram since 2012, 11 or something like that. And I had always kind of wanted to be like some type of content creator or influencer, as many of us do, but nothing ever really caught that I had ever done. And so when I started my TikTok, I was like, oh, like, well, maybe this can be another way for me to kind of get into that industry. And so my first couple TikTok videos were like lifestyle content. I was doing like reorganizing my fridge, and here's my beauty haul, and here's like my unboxing of my high-end bag, because I had really got into like lifestyle things in the pandemic. Like before the pandemic, I basically only slept at my house and like hosted at my house, like pre-gaming and stuff to go out. I was always like in the streets and like hanging out and doing stuff. When I was in quarantine, I'm like, oh wow, your house is not a home. So I got really into like decorating my home. I really got into the DIY stuff. I got really into like my skincare. I got really into buying bags. So like my lifestyle definitely shifted, and I wanted to share that through social media, but like nobody cared because who the fuck was I, you know what I mean? And so that was my original videos on TikTok. I think I had like a couple followers. I had like a couple like 200, 300 views on the video, nothing crazy. But I also like didn't think anything of it because TikTok was still so new then. And so when my therapist challenged me to actually date, I did what most people do. I got on Tinder and I made a TikTok video about it. I set my phone up on a tripod, not even a tripod, like a phone stand, a cell phone stand. And I was like, hey, like my therapist had challenged me to go on a date. I met somebody off of Tinder. This is what I'm wearing. Wish me luck. That literally was just a video. And I don't know what it was about that video that got the response that it got, but I think I got like 20,000 plays, 20,000 views on that video easily. And I was just like, whoa, like, what is this? Because even on Twitter, where I was like a lot more well known, the most followers I've ever had was like a little over 5,000. I think I had just hit 5K at that time. No, actually, my old account had just hit 5K and then I got suspended. Listen, we ain't gonna talk about it. I got suspended and I was like rebuilding my followers on my new account, the Baddie Galore. And so, and like I said on Instagram, I've never had a lot of followers on Instagram. I've never had a lot of engagement on Instagram. So like having 20,000 people watch my video was like, oh, y'all like this? And like, because it was getting so many views, people were like, oh, like, how did the date go? Like, give us an update. Like, are you gonna go on a second date? And I'm like, oh, so like, let me just keep filming this content. And so I would go on these dates and I would film myself getting ready for the date. Well, I would be like, okay, this is what I'm wearing to the date. And I would give like a little background about the person I was going on a date with, whether I went on a date with them before, or they were somebody new, if I met them on Tinder or her, whatever it was. And I was getting views. I was getting likes. I think just within like the couple months of me posting about my dating experience, I had gotten to like 5,000 to 7,000 followers on TikTok. And like, I realized that like, oh, this is like a niche, because as I got more into the app, I would see that there were a lot of other people who would post similar content as me, but they were all straight, right? So it was always straight women talking about their dating experience. There wasn't a lot of queer women or queer people talking about their dating experience. So I started branding myself like Black lesbian, live in DC, going to brunch, this is what I wore, like going to dinner and going to this date, whatever like that. And I would talk about like my experience, like, you know, as a Black lesbian in DC, looking for love. It became my brand. And within a year, I had grown my followers up to almost 10K, and I had got my first brand deal. I did a Pride Month campaign with Giants, a food chain company, and I got paid for it. And I was just like, oh, like this actually could be like a side hustle. Like I could maybe really do this. And like I said, I had always wanted to become a like influencer or a content creator. I don't know why people don't want to admit that. I don't know why people who become popular be like, I never thought this would happen to me. I wanted this attention, right? Like I wanted this popularity. I wanted this type of engagement. Like I've always wanted to be in that space, because I think that there are not enough Black people, and there definitely are not enough queer people. I've always seen a opening for someone like me in that space. I just didn't know how to break into it. And I realized like, oh, me sharing my relationship, or like me sharing my journey in dating, is that way to break into it. And I think another part of that was TikTok became almost like therapy to me, because on Twitter, like I said, I was pretty well known within the Black lesbian community, and I had been in some pretty public relationships and equally had some pretty public breakups. And so I got to a point where I stopped sharing my dating life on Twitter altogether. Like my partners would get upset with me because they're like, you never tweet me, you never post about me, like you never acknowledge me. Like even if them, her and I, or they and I, because I date people who are non-binary and trans, were cool before we started dating. Once we stopped dating, I would stop literally interacting with them because I didn't want people to figure out that we were. Whereas on TikTok, nobody knew me, right? Like when I started my TikTok, I didn't follow like many people off of Twitter. Like I followed a few friends who were already on the app who I knew like in real life personally. And so I almost like in a weird way felt more comfortable talking so openly about like my experience and like the fact that I wanted love and was looking for love on TikTok, because nobody knew me. And then I was getting the views and I was getting the engagement and I was getting the brand opportunities. But what also was happening during that time was that I was not getting the emotional connection that I supposedly was looking for. I was going out on all these dates for the content. So got to this point where like I'm on the app, I'm swiping. I even paid for like Tinder Premium where I could see who was liking me and almost like matching with people that I wasn't even necessarily fully attracted to, or like after initial conversation didn't really feel a vibe with, because the date would equal content. And it's so funny because Winnie Parker actually made a video about this the other day where she said like, I be knowing before I go out on these dates that it's not gonna work with these guys, but I'm doing it for the plot, because if I don't go on these dates, then I don't have the story times. And if I don't have the story times, then I don't have the content for y'all to watch and engage with. Same thing happened to me. I was going on the dates for the plot, for the videos, for the content. Because even the girl that I posted that I was going out with, the very first video that got, you know, quote unquote viral, technically viral is 1 million views, but I think anything over like 10,000 is pretty solid. I knew after like our second date that her and I were not going to work. And I knew that we weren't ever going to do anything long term. But I kept hanging out with her because one, we were actually having a lot of fun. She was taking me out on a lot of like really cool dates and doing things I had just never experienced before. But two, because people were invested in the story and in the journey. I was having people literally come up to me in the streets. Like I remember I was throwing a party on 9th Street at Mirror Lounge. RIP Mirror Lounge. I don't know if they're still open. But I was throwing a party at Mirror Lounge and me and my best friend were outside the club taking pictures. I was taking pictures of her. And someone was like, oh my God, like, are you that girl from TikTok? I love your videos. I love watching your content. I love that you share your dating journey. We don't see a lot of Black lesbians on the app sharing their dating journeys. Like, girl, what's going on? Like, you haven't posted in a while. Like, people were keeping up with me. And I fucking loved it, right? I fucking enjoyed it until I realized that I was enjoying people keeping up with me more than I was enjoying the dates I was going on. But it didn't really click for me that I had lost the plot and that I was really kind of moving very desperately on these apps looking for the dates, because the dates meant video content and the video content meant engagement, and engagement meant potentially more brand deals. Because at that point I was like, oh, I can do this in real life. Like, I want to make this my new side hustle. Like, I didn't want to become a content creator full time or anything like that, but I was like, I want to become the influencer that I've always wanted to be. And this is my way of doing it, until my views really plummeted. And they plummeted around like winter of 2022. I had got into a situationship with this girl who was absolutely terrible for me. I mean, our relationship was very toxic, very chaotic. It's like, did I learn anything in therapy at that point? You know what I mean? And the main thing is that we weren't going out on dates because frankly, she couldn't afford them. No tea, no shade. That's just what it was. And so I stopped having content to share because the relationship that I was in was not providing any content to me. And baby, let me tell you, my views plummeted. A video not doing well was 3,000 to 5,000 plays. It got to the point where I couldn't even break 300. And I was doing all the things. I'm looking at, okay, how to get your engagement back up, what's being shadow banned, all of this stuff. I try to pivot my content to other stuff. I try to post more about my parties. I try to do some lifestyle things, some unboxing. Like I'm like, okay, like what can I do here? Like, how can I keep engaged with my audience? But the issue was that I had created a brand for myself and the expectation of the audience that followed me, what type of content they want to see. So when I stopped posting that content, they stopped being interested. They had moved on. And like I said, at that time, I had decided that I really want to lean into becoming a content creator slash influencer. So seeing my numbers dip like that fucking sucks. I'm like, well, how am I gonna get brand deals now? I'm not getting fucking views. And even though me and that person stopped dating by like January 2023 and I was back on going on dates and stuff like that, I think the ship had sailed. I think that people were coming to my page just for those type of videos, and when they weren't seeing them, they didn't stay. I wasn't coming on people's For You page anymore because I wasn't posting as consistent, and my views just like did not recover. And I had to start having conversations with myself about like, why do you care so much? Like, why does it bother you that your videos are so low? And like, why is your first thought to then just start to go back on dates? Because that's exactly what I did. And I started to have kind of like hard conversations with myself about it. I'm like, oh, like, your priorities are not straight because you have now been dating, right? Very intentionally. I will always use the word intentional. You have been dating intentionally for 2 years now. And the only thing that you've gotten from this is another very toxic situationship where you were wasting your money. All of the work you've been doing in therapy hasn't been applied because you've been more focused on dating for content than dating for the love that you said you wanted. So I eventually said to myself, like, okay, if you really want to find your person, your partner, and that love that you said you've been looking for, you're going to have to change your perspective around dating, how you are approaching dating, and what role social media will play in that dating journey that you were on. And so when I met my now partner, my perspective around dating was a lot different. I stopped putting so much pressure on myself, not only to find love, but to create content from that journey of finding love. When her and I first started chatting and we both were like, well, what are you looking for? I was like, yeah, I'm just looking to have a good time. Whatever happens, happens, and whatever doesn't happen, doesn't happen. She's like, same. I think I made like a couple videos about her when we initially met. And then by like fall of 2023, I had started to completely shift my content away from my dating life. And there was a couple of reasons why. The main one was because I actually took a class on how to go viral on social media. That's what the class was called. And our professor like really challenged us to like not only look at the trends and the things that make videos go viral, but look at your analytics and see how audiences are engaging with your content, like which videos are really performing well, and like figure out why they're performing well. And at that time, because my relationship videos were not getting as much engagement, I had started to just like give my opinion on random like lesbian topics and teen drama that was happening on the app or that I would see. Why not talk about which one to talk about if no one's watching your videos anyways? And those videos start to like really blow up. People really like when I give my unsolicited opinions about queer topics, because you know, you have a whole bunch of creators like that, right, who just talk about different things that are happening, but most of them are not queer. A lot of them are Black, but most of them are not queer, and most of them are not talking about queer topics, and when they do, it's coming from like a straight perspective. And so I'm like, oh, another niche. Honestly, like my content pivoting to that place is very full circle because that's how I was on Twitter for many years. Worked in my favor. I hit 10K back in the fall of last year, and then I recently just hit 20,000. I actually gained like 10,000 more followers over a span of like a couple months, just because my videos were just going viral over and over again. And I think I share all of this to say that like I can understand how people see social media as a way to help them through something like looking for love and finding love, because I think that women are ashamed to talk about wanting to be in a relationship because it's always seen as being desperate, right? Somebody saying, I want a man, I want to be with somebody, I want to be in love. Girl, stop being desperate. Why don't you just love yourself? Why can't you just be with yourself? You gotta love yourself first and be okay with being by yourself first before you can find somebody. And that is all true, but there's nothing wrong with saying like, I want to be in love and I want a partner. And I think that a lot of people use social media as a safe space to do that, when it's really not, because we see what happens. And I think that it's a really great way to build a following in a community on social media, because so many other women can relate to being in that similar type of journey. It's not easy for everybody just to find somebody to be with, right? It's not easy for everyone to just fall in love. It's harder for other people. So seeing people go through similar journeys with you is comforting and it's inspirational, but it can be toxic. You can get distracted from that journey if you're so focused on creating content. And you do open yourself up to a lot of critiques and a lot of judgment and a lot of think pieces. So I'm not saying that like you shouldn't share your relationship journey on social media, or you should. I just think that if you're gonna do it, you have to be prepared for like what could come with it depending on what you share. But I don't know if I would be where I was in the relationship that I am if I had not gone through that. It pushed me to be more open and to pursue dating in a completely different way than I had before. It allowed me to kind of like look back at the way I was approaching certain like dates and stuff and how I was showing up and like critique myself. And ultimately it gave me the social media following that I have today. And I don't think if I did not have the followers I have on TikTok, I would have started this channel, because I am using this channel to continue to pursue those dreams of being the lifestyle content creator that I've always wanted to be. And I use my TikTok as a way to just talk about what I want to talk about. Even though I had to shift my content and I lost the opportunity to get brand deals in that way, I don't think it's a completely lost cause, because you have other platforms where you can kind of like do other things. And I just wanted to talk about that because when I seen all that drama going on, I'm like, ooh, I can relate. Like, I've been the Talitha, I've been the Winnie in a different way, yes, like not exactly the same content, but definitely my content was centered around me wanting to be in a relationship for many years. And while I didn't get any hate from it, I did learn a lot from it. So that's my little spiel about the topic. Let me know if you guys enjoyed it. Make sure you guys like, comment, and share, and I'll see you next time.